Happy holidays, folks, and welcome to December, the holiday event on the channel where I explore the death and downfall of the DCEU films. Now, I'll be uploading a video every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday between December 4th and December 28th. There will be spoilers, so keep that in mind. And if all this sounds interesting to you, kick back, relax, grab some snacks, because today we're talking about SHAZAM isn't your typical superhero movie. It's more of a family drama comedy than it is a superhero film, and I think that works perfectly well. It allows SHAZAM to stand out on its own amongst the litany of superhero films. Like, if you were to take all the superhero elements out of SHAZAM and replace them with like a mundane element like Billy being a part of a sports team or something like that, the movie more or less still functions in the same exact way, except maybe Dr. Savannah, but that's because he's like a weird demon-wielding magic man, so he'd probably need an overhaul into like a more mundane character. But everything else kind of functions the same. Billy meeting an old wise mentor, Billy bonding with his new brother by having a similar interest in like this sports thing that he's now thrust upon, him gaining an ego from being popular and breaking up with his sibling, causing him to learn the value of his true family. Like, everything more or less functions the same way. You could even like rework the end of the movie that, like, say he got injured at like a sports game or something like that, and his family had to nurse him back to health, kind of like Mr. Miyagi, or bring him like his special whatever that he needs to win the game or something like that. It still functions on a pretty standard way, even without the superhero elements, because the SHAZAM elements of SHAZAM are more there to bring Billy closer to his family than they are for the audience to experience your typical superhero adventure, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. But what exactly happens in this film? Well, we start off with meeting our antagonist, Dr. Thaddeus Savannah, as a young lad. He's in the backseat of his family's car with his older brother and father. And by the way, his father is a jackass in every performance that he's in. Like, he's created 3 DC supervillains over the course of the multiverse. Like, in Smallville, he gave birth to Lex Luthor and was a horrible father, turning him into the monster that he is. In Batman and Robin, he killed Uma Thurman's character, turning her into Poison Ivy. And now in this, he gave birth to Thaddeus Savannah, who becomes a supervillain. This man has created 3 different supervillains in 3 different universes. He must be stopped. So we learn a bit about Thaddeus' home life here, and we learn that it sucks. His dad is a jackass who thinks that Thaddeus is weak and not a real man, and he encourages his older brother to beat the crap out of him to try and inspire him to become a real man and stand up for himself, which is not how you parent in the slightest bit. So Thaddeus tries to mind his own business in the back seat, and he gets teleported into the lair of the wizard SHAZAM. SHAZAM then tests Thaddeus to see if he's worthy of his power, because he needs to transfer it to a new champion in order to stop the 7 deadly sins from escaping. Thaddeus gets lured by the sin's magic, and he is banished from the wizard's lair, saying that he is not worthy of his power. Thaddeus, when he snaps back out of it and is inside his family car, starts freaking out, resulting in his family getting into an accident that ends up paralyzing his father. Now, I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw this, I thought that the dad was going to die here, but he ends up being fine and is just paralyzed later on in the movie. So, okay. We're then introduced to our main character, Billy Batson. He tricks a couple of cops into locking them into a pawn shop while he uses their computer to search for a woman who has the same last name as him. Interesting. Billy ends up traveling to this woman's house in the area, and we learn that the reason he was going there is because he's trying to find his lost mother. Unfortunately, this isn't her. The cops arrive, and they catch him and bring him to an adoption agency, where the woman tells him that he has run away from multiple foster homes in 6 counties, that none of them want them back because he ran away, and he is ruining his chances of finding a peaceful and happy life. So they're going to give him one last shot with this brand new group home family, and that's when we're introduced to Billy's new family. He gets a new mom, dad, and 5 brand new siblings that vary from older and younger. Those siblings being Mary, Darla, Eugene, Pedro, and Freddie. We're then introduced to all Billy's siblings one by one to get you attached to them in the same way that Billy is going to fall in love with them by the end of the film. Now, none of them get a lot of screen time with the exception of Freddie. He's more of like the co-lead in the film, so they all have distinct character traits and appearances so that you have a reason to get attached to them. Mary is the oldest and the most responsible, who's about to go to college. Darla is the youngest, who is the most affectionate. Eugene is a gamer who is portrayed as being intelligent because he plays a lot of video games. Then we have Pedro, who is portrayed to us as someone that is trying to gain a lot of muscle, and later on, by the end of the movie, we find out that Pedro is actually gay. That's more of a focus in the second SHAZAM movie, but there is a line at the end of this one that heavily implies that he's interested in men, which is pretty cool. So then we are introduced to the final sibling, Freddy, who, like I said, gets the most screen time and the most development for his character because he becomes Billy's best friend and more or less the co-lead of the film. So we learn that Freddy is super into superheroes. I like this opening scene where Billy meets Freddy because I like the fact that Freddy is so unapologetically just himself. Like, he doesn't mind the fact that he says weird things because he's just like, well, if people are going to like me, they're just going to like me for the way I am, and that's just kind of how things are going to be. And I respect that. We had this little brief interaction of Freddy and Billy trying to bond. Freddy's showcasing him all of his superhero memorabilia, but Billy's being very distant, so it's not really succeeding very well. Then the following day, we're at school. We see Darla trying to showcase Billy around the school, but he's very distant, and he ends up hurting her feelings by saying that they're not real family, which Darla doesn't really understand because she sees Billy as her new adopted big brother, and she loves him very much, but Billy doesn't reciprocate those emotions because he's very closed off from everyone because he doesn't view his foster family as a real family. He's like, I have a real mom out there that gave birth to me and I just need to find her and my life's gonna be perfect. So he accidentally hurts Darla's feelings. He's a bit upset about that. And then we're showcased what Dr. Savannah has been up to. He's now a grown man, he runs his own business, and he's been operating these science experiments by having a bunch of therapy sessions for people who appear to have mass hysteria, but what it actually is the wizard Shazam bouncing around from person to person to person trying to find the next worthy champion to transfer his powers to. So Savannah uses this therapy session in which it has a video recording of the woman being teleported to Shazam's lair. I'm gonna call it a lair because I don't exactly know what the Shazam lair is. I don't know if it's a castle, I don't know if it's a cave, a dungeon. We're only ever seeing the inside of it from what I remember, and yeah, I don't know what exactly it is or where it is. It's just a lair, so that's what we're going with. So Savannah finally figures out the code to get inside of Shazam's lair. He goes inside, he steals the eye that allows him to control all the 7 deadly sins. He puts it in, he absorbs the power of the sins and gains more or less the same ability as Shazam himself. Now I'm gonna stop here for a second. I really love this. I love that Savannah was created by Shazam. Now granted, it's not like in a Spider-Man way where like all of Peter's villains are connected to him emotionally. Billy doesn't know Savannah. He doesn't have any problem with him specifically, so when he becomes Shazam, it's more of just an issue of Billy has the power that Savannah wants to get, so that's why they have to fight each other. But I still like the fact that the wizard still caused Savannah to exist. He caused the problem that he was trying to stop. His high standards for choosing a champion caused a young boy who was always vying to learn that there was something more about him that people appreciated was then torn away from him in an instant, causing him to go down this path of villainy. And I absolutely love that because now the sins are free, Savannah's got a ton of power, and Shazam still doesn't have his champion. So we cut back to see Billy at school and Freddy is being bullied. He's getting beaten up by some guys, which, like, how much of a jackass do you have to be to beat down a disabled kid? Like, first you hit him with a car, then you beat the crap out of him because you hit him with a car in front of the entire school? Like, really, guys? Do you think anyone's gonna think you're cool and tough? You just beat the shit out of a disabled kid. If anything, everyone's gonna think you're a bunch of bitches. But anyway, Billy stands up for him. He hits the 2 bullies and they start chasing him. Billy ends up escaping, getting on a train, and then he gets teleported to Shazam's lair. Billy, unlike every other person who was brought into Shazam's lair, he doesn't get the same test of being put up against the sins to see if he can resist their temptation because they're gone now. Savannah took them and there is no test anymore. And Shazam even says that he's out of options. So Billy is it. He's the guy that has to take the power. So he forces Billy to become Shazam. And I really like this scene. It's super funny in my opinion.
Speak my name!
I don't know your name, sir. We just met.
Shazam.
Wait, for real?
Say the key!
That whole interaction between the 2 of them is just great. And the wizard seemingly dies here, but we learn in Shazam 2 that he's perfectly fine, so I guess we'll talk about that more in that video. So, Billy is now Shazam, but he doesn't really know how the powers work because this did the thing that I usually don't like, but this is an excuse for this movie to have Billy be in the Shazam form as Zachary Levi for a while, so I understand it, but I hate when characters vaguely describe things in movies when they could very easily and concisely explain how shit works. Like, there's no reason the wizard vaguely tells Billy how to shift between his normal human self and his god form. He could have just been like, yeah, so like you say my name every time to switch back and forth between your powers, but like he doesn't. So Billy has to like try and figure it out himself and is stuck in his god form for a while, which is funny, but at the same time it's just kind of like, why don't you just explain it to him, man? Just like tell him. Damn. So Billy sneaks off home and he gets the attention of Freddy, and the two of them start experimenting on what his abilities are. They're traveling throughout the night, they end up stopping a couple of crimes and learning what Billy can do more or less. Not everything he can do, but most of what he can do. So they end up bonding a bit as brothers and friends, and then they realize that they have to go home because, well, they're still kids, and even though Billy doesn't know how to turn back into his human state, Freddy convinces him to go home anyway. So then they get home, they see Darla because they end up running into her room to evade their parents, and then Billy starts freaking out, explaining everything that happened to him, and then he says Shazam, and that turns it back to his normal state, and they figure out how Billy's powers operate in the transitioning stage. Freddy and Billy also make Darla promise not to say anything, and they joke about how the fact she's a terrible secret keeper, and it results in a very funny moment later on in the movie where the rest of the siblings figure out that Billy is Shazam without Darla saying anything, and she has like this little moment of solidarity because she's happy that she kept the secret to the rest of the siblings. Are kind of looking at her like, bro, what the hell, man? We then get a very satisfying scene where Savannah takes revenge on his family. He goes into the boardroom where his father and older brother are having some kind of meeting. We never really learn what kind of business Savannah is in, but it doesn't really matter. It's not important to this scene at all. So he goes into the boardroom. His brother tries to be all tough and be a jackass and threatens to throw him out himself. And then Savannah throws him out of a window. And honestly, that was just so satisfying after the piece of shit that he was at the beginning of the movie. And then Savannah does the villain thing. He summons the 7 deadly sins and lets them tear apart and eat all of the board members in the room, leaving his dad all alone. His dad is pleading and begging, saying he'll give him anything that he wants, just not to kill him. And then he hits him with the same line that he gave him at the beginning of the movie.
You can't go crying to other people all the time.
Savannah obviously doesn't care, lets the demons eat him, and then he leaves. We then get more scenes of Billy and Freddy bonding and testing out all of Billy's abilities, and, you know, like I said, just like the last sequence, this is pretty fun. Seeing them goof around, try and learn what Billy can do as Shazam is always a delight. And then this is where conflict starts to come up. Freddy is getting a bit overzealous with Billy in his superpowered state, and he tells the school that he's going to invite Shazam to a school lunch the following day, and Billy isn't too happy about the fact that Freddy is kind of just forcing him to like do stuff that he doesn't really want to do. There's no particular reason why Billy wouldn't want to help out his brother who's bullied by making him seem cooler. It's just more that Billy is kind of getting an ego about his powers, and Freddy offering up Billy to do something he didn't previously agree to kind of just irks him a little bit. The two of them continue this by getting into an argument at dinner where the family starts talking about Shazam and how he's like their new hometown hero, and Billy and him kind of just let their emotions out at the table. This all culminates in the following day and midpoint of the movie. Billy, obviously because he got into a fight with Freddy, forgets about going to the school lunch, and Freddy ends up getting jumped by the bullies and embarrassed in front of the entire school. Meanwhile, Billy is just messing around with his abilities as Shazam, trying to get people to give him money for tips while he's, you know, showing off his powers. Freddy ends up showing up when school's over, and he starts tearing into Billy about how his powers are getting to his head and he's growing an ego, and then Billy ends up shooting a lightning bolt at a bus, destroying the tire, causing it to almost crash. So Billy rushes over, he ends up catching it and saving it, and then he's like all hyped about it. He's telling Freddy, he's like, dude, I just caught a bus, everything's so sick. And Freddy's like, you almost killed those people. What the hell is wrong with you? You caught the bus, yeah, but you caused the problem in the first place. That's not what superheroes do. So the two of them get into a massive fight. It's caught on the news. A scene that I forgot to mention that results in Billy's family figuring out that he is Shazam is that prior to this moment, Billy ended up running into his older sister, Mary, and having a conversation with her. But since Billy's a stupid 15-year-old, he ends up,
Basically 15.
He ends up revealing way too much information, talking to her, saying her name, mentioning the fact that he knows that she's in a foster family, and that kind of leads her and the rest of the family to figuring out that he's Shazam in a few scenes from now. But anyway, back to where we just left off. Billy and Freddy are in a huge fight. It's being caught on the news, and then after Freddy walks away, that's when Dr. Sivana shows up and beats the ever-living shit out of Billy. But the positive of this is that Billy learns to fly for the first time. Sort of. Not as super fast as it does later on in the movie, but he's starting to learn how to fly now, and that's his last ability. Lightning, indestructible, super strength, and the ability to fly, as well as to be able to shift between human and superpowered form. Those are Shazam's abilities. So Billy is running away, trying to survive a battle with Dr. Sivana, and he ends up transforming back into his child state in order to escape. However, because Billy and Freddy's argument was caught on the news, Sivana sees that Freddy knows who Shazam is, and he ends up taking him hostage, resulting in him taking the rest of the family hostage. However, before that happens, Billy gets chewed out by his new parents, telling him that he needs to stop being reckless and stop doing all these bad things, skipping school, getting into fights with his family, so on and so forth. And then the rest of Billy's family comes into this room, his siblings, and they're just like, hey, we figured out that you're Shazam. Also, we figured out where your mom actually lives. And before they really get to talk about anything else, Billy takes the paperwork that says where his real mother is and chases after her. Then, while Billy is gone and the parents are searching out for Billy, Freddy and Sivana come back, and the whole family is taken hostage now, minus the parents who are out searching for Billy. Then Billy arrives at his mother's house, and she is a piece of shit. She sees Billy, and she's very apprehensive. There's this really heartbreaking scene where Billy goes to give her a hug, and she's just like, ooh, whoa, okay, let's not do all of that. It's very reminiscent of how Billy was reserved when Darla tried to give him a hug at the beginning of the movie, and just seeing that happen to him with his own birth mother is just really hard. And I really like this scene. I didn't bring this up earlier on in the video, but we do get a flashback sequence at the beginning of Shazam that showcases how Billy and his mother got separated and how he became an orphan. So in that scene, we see that Billy's mother is very happy and enjoying her time with him because that's how Billy remembers it. But now, in the present, we're told the story from his mother's perspective, and we see the reality of it. His mother was just a young teenager, which, by the way, I don't know why they didn't cast two actresses to play the mom. Like, it's the same actress, and she very clearly isn't a 17-year-old in this scene. Like, I thought Billy's mom was, like, an adult when she had him and abandoned him, but then she's like, I was 17. And I was like, no, the fuck you weren't. So we see it from her perspective, and she's very, like, exhausted and burned out, and she doesn't want to, raise him. And then when they get separated, she decides that it'd be better off if Billy was put into the foster care program instead of her taking care of him herself, because she didn't think she could do it. And then she just leaves him, and this completely destroys Billy. He ends up walking away, and he starts to realize that his foster family is his real family because they actually care and love about him. And then that's when he gets the call from Sivana, learning that his family has been taken hostage. And I absolutely love this scene where Billy runs off and jumps off of the apartment building into the Shazam. It's just so sick, man. I love this whole thing here. It just looks so cool. So Billy arrives. Him and Sivana travel back to the wizard's lair so that they can get the staff, and Billy can transfer his powers to him. Billy's family shows up and tells Sivana to back off because that's their brother. Then Billy ends up getting a sneak attack off of Sivana, and they learn his weakness from this moment, but they bring it up a bit later. So Billy takes the rest of the family. They all escape. Billy's able to manipulate the lair to teleport them to where they want to be. They end up teleporting into a strip club that Billy had snuck into earlier on in the film when he was in his Shazam form, and it leads to a very comedic moment here. So they all escape. They end up running into a carnival to try and hide from Sivana, but he finds out where they are because Billy didn't shift back into his human form until they arrived at that destination. So Sivana arrives and the final battle ensues. The siblings tell Billy that Sivana's weakness is the sins that are inside of him. They need to lure out all of the demons in order to make him a normal human being so that he can be easily defeated. So Sivana lets out 6 of the demons to hunt down Billy's family. Meanwhile, the last demon being inside Sivana to give him power allows him and Billy to have a final battle. They're flying around, fighting everything. Billy is getting the upper hand, but not everything is going perfectly well. And eventually, all of Billy's family gets captured, resulting in Billy having to succeed and give Sivana the power. He goes to give Sivana the ability, and when he grabs the staff, he ends up shocking Sivana with some lightning. and then he has all of his family grab the staff, and he shares the power of Shazam with his family the same way that the wizard did with him. Because, again, something else I didn't mention earlier on in the film is that Shazam mentions that there used to be 6 wizards. There were 5 other wizards besides himself, but they all died off as time went on, and he was the last one remaining. So Billy gets the idea that he can give his power to his siblings, since there were supposed to be 6 wizards to begin with. So he transfers his powers to his siblings, and this is something that's kind of like thrown away in like the second movie, but like from this sequence here, it kind of feels like each of Billy's siblings has a specific aspect of his powers. Like they all have an individual part of the Shazam power set, but in the following movie, it seems like they can all just do the same thing, but I guess that's more for something to talk about then. But now the entire Shazam family is powered up. Now the fight's evenly matched. Billy takes Savannah and continues fighting him while the family deals with the rest of the sins. Billy eventually ends up warding out the final demon by antagonizing it, turning Savannah into a normal man. He brings Savannah back to his family. They've saved everyone at the carnival, which I really love that. I love the fact that his family is protecting and saving people at the carnival. It's just so refreshing in comparison to like all of these other DC movies where like the priority's never been to focus on saving people. So just seeing a fun superhero movie where people are being saved is great. Like Aquaman and Shazam both had scenes where the hero saved people, and it's just so refreshing in comparison to like the earlier DCEU movies. But anyway, they save everyone at the carnival. We see Shazam arrive with Savannah. They pull the eye out of his head, causing all of the demons to disappear. They all travel to the wizard's lair. They put the eye back. All of the demons turn to stone. And something I didn't really mention, but it kind of gets hard telling the demons apart. They all have distinct designs, but I don't know. I feel like each of them should have been color-based, because Billy figures out which sin is which when he's talking to Savannah, and figures out which one's inside of him. That's what allows him to antagonize it with his speech in order to lure it out. But I could never tell which sin was which, because they all just look like little demon gremlin things. So, you know, I don't know. Good on Billy for figuring out which sin was which, because I certainly couldn't. They all kind of look the same to me. But regardless, they're all captured. Savannah's in jail, and then we get one more scene of Billy and his family all united at home. Billy's joining into their family prayer for dinner. He actually gives the prayer this time. It's very wholesome, very sweet. Everything's nice. And we get the last scene of the movie where Billy shows up to school as Shazam and tells like the entire school that Freddy and the rest of his family are all like super cool. He's best buds with them. Freddy taught him everything he knows about a superhero. And then we get a cameo from Superman, which it's a little weird, but at the time, Henry Cavill wasn't Superman in the DCEU. They hadn't been able to bring him back on contract for like future installments and stuff like that. So the actor who plays Superman in this is just a stunt double. So the camera was shot so his face wasn't in it, which is super awkward, but I don't know. I find it kind of funny nowadays just looking back at it. So that's pretty much all of Shazam. There are a couple of post-credit scenes, but they end up not really going anywhere. One of them is a setup for what would have been a third Shazam movie, but I don't think we're ever going to get that. And the other is just a fun jab at Aquaman, because Freddy and Billy are experimenting with more of his powers, and Freddy's trying to see if he can talk to fish, and Billy pokes a jab at it saying like, well, what's the point of talking to fish? It's not like it's a cool ability. And then Freddy's like, I don't know, you can control an army of billions in the ocean. And Billy's like, oh, yeah, I guess that is true. So that's all of Shazam. I really love this movie. It's super fun. It's very unconventional compared to like most superhero movies where it's like, you know, the guy gets the power, they start doing superhero things, villain appears that's connected to their past in some way, shape, or form, and they have to fight the villain. This is more of, you know, like I said, a family drama where Billy learns what it means to be a good brother, to be a family member, to be a part of a family in general, and accept the love and affection and reciprocate it to others based off of the fact that he just randomly got lucky and got superpowers. So I think that's pretty cool. Now, sorry for the little edits in this video. It's just making these like back to back to back every single day has been a lot, and I haven't been able to edit all of those as much as I would like to. So yeah, sorry about that. But I appreciate you getting to the end of this video and hearing me talk about that. So please stick around for the next video in this series, and remember folks, you're innocent until proven villainous. Link to my Twitter down below. Comment, like, subscribe, all that YouTuber nonsense, and I will catch you next time.